Welcome back. Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, gardening became one of the biggest trends, and I was really interested, but I wasn't invited to that party. And this year, I do not want to miss out. The one problem, I do not know where to start. So, here to break down the basic beginner fundamentals of gardening is the founder of Epic Gardening, Kevin Espiritu, all the way from San Diego.
How's it going, guys? Good to be back.
We're glad to see you. And as Lainey mentioned, gardening has become a huge pandemic affection. It's a hot hobby. And as a result, everything ended up selling out really quickly, really early last year. So, what do we need to do if we want to get into this year? What do we need to do and to make sure that we're following the correct timing?
Yeah, you're completely right. And it seems like 2021 is going to follow the same trend. And so I'm already seeing seed companies sold out of seeds. I'm seeing seed companies shut down. We want to get on top of it. So if you have a local nursery, I would be on the phone calling them, asking them when seeds are coming in, supplies are coming in, maybe even little plant starts. Get ahead of the curve because you might miss the party again, and I don't want you to.
I already find gardening really intimidating, Kevin, because I typically don't grow things, I kill things. So I definitely need a coach. I need us to start from the beginning. What are some of the easier beginning veggies?
Sure, so there's a lot of them. And the first thing I would say is pick a plant that's easy, but that you're actually excited about eating. Because I know a lot of people will say radishes are easy to grow. They are, but I don't know about you, a lot of people have a hard time eating them or they don't know quite what to do with them. So they might be easy, but once you get the harvest, you're not really too invested in it. So some easy crops that people love. I mean, any sort of leafy green like this lettuce here. Personally, for me, I'll go with arugula or kale. That's a classic. You can go with a carrot. Leaf greens, root crops, some of the easiest crops you can grow.
Not where you are, but where we are, there's snow on the ground. No one's going to be planting anything anytime soon. So are you suggesting if we get a jump start on this, that we are bringing them indoors and like helping them stay alive until we can plant them?
That's exactly what I'm suggesting for Canadian gardeners. You're living just naturally in a colder climate, right? So what we as gardeners like to say is you want to start your seeds. You can start your seeds outdoors when there's no frost on the ground. We call that your last frost date. For most of Canada, that's sometime in May-ish. It really depends on the year and specifically where you are, but somewhere around May. Now, that means that if you were to start a seed in May, let's say it's lettuce, 60 days. Now you're 2 months ahead. You're looking at June and then July. What if you started your seeds in little trays like this indoors for the first month? Then it's a month old by the time May comes around and you've already gotten a jump start on your season.
What are some strategies, best strategies actually, for growing seeds?
Sure, so any tray will work. So you could do this in just like a plastic cup if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter. I have sort of this little fancy tray that I really like, but again, you can use anything. So I'll put it up here just for example. You've got your seed pack, and what you want to do, instead of like a standard potting mix, you actually want what's called a seed starting mix. It's much finer grained and it's a lot easier for the seeds to start in a mix like that. And then what you'll do is just fill up your tray, and again, it's a little hard to see here, but just pop a couple seeds in. I like to do maybe 2 or 3 seeds per cell just to make sure something sprouts up. Sometimes a seed is bad for some reason. So pop them on the surface. You'll then want to sprinkle a little bit of soil over the top just to cover them up. Give it a nice water, put it in that part of your home that you're really trying to nurture your green thumb. Eventually they will start to sprout.
So what are some common mistakes that newbie gardeners are making?
So in the world of starting seeds, I actually will say you want to try to give it as much light as humanly possible. Because remember, even a windowsill, a south-facing windowsill is probably your best available light. That might still not be enough. And the way you'll know is, take these cauliflower here. If I wasn't giving this enough light, this stem would be really stretched out. It might be this tall, and then the leaves are here. By the time I put that out in the garden, even a simple wind might snap that over. And so you want a lot of light on your seedlings.
What about the light? Like,
We have a ring light. Like I have a ring light. Am I going to put
I have
this on my
studio
plant?
lights. Do studio lights work?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my best go-to recommendation would be just one of those standard shop lights you might find in a workshop. That's those big fluorescent tubes that kind of hang down. That works really, really well. But if you've got a ring light or a studio light, honestly, any light is better than just a simple windowsill.
See, I thought it had to be natural sunlight. I didn't know it could be fake light.
Well, light is light in the truest sense of the word. Another thing that I know probably you guys have struggled with, I've struggled with it as well, is watering problems. Most people either over or underwater their plant. It's one of the #1 killers.
How do you know what the exact Goldilocks amount of water, not too much, not too little, is?
Yeah, that is the quintessential question in gardening, I would say, for especially for beginners. So let's take this lettuce, for example. And unfortunately, there's really not a this plant needs this much water type of answer. You kind of have to engage your green thumb, so to speak. So everything affects the amount of water, what type of soil you've got, the pot you have, how hot or cold it's been. And so one of the most reliable ways is also one of the simplest ways, and it's just the finger test. And so what you'll do is you'll grab your finger, pop it into the pot, about 2-3 inches down. You can pull your finger out, see how much soil adheres. If there's nothing, it's probably bone dry. If it feels extremely wet, then back off, don't water. But if it's in that middle zone, you'll know you're in a good spot. Another thing you can do is just take a look at the actual plant. Plants are going to give you the signals. And so imagine if this lettuce was really droopy, right? Either it's underwatered or it's overwatered. They kind of present the same way. Then you can stick your finger down in the soil and see which one it is, and you'll know what you're doing wrong. So you will eventually build a sixth sense around it.
So let's talk about soil. My mom used to swear by this kind of like blood and bone meal that she would put in, which sounds pretty disgusting, but I bought it just because I thought I might need it. Do we actually need stuff in our soil? And if so, how do you add it?
Yeah, so I would say if you're growing outdoors in your ground, like just actually in the ground, it's less important over time. If you're growing in containers, like I know a lot of people are, we're in small spaces, we're in our homes stuck, we want to do something, then yeah, you pretty much are going to want to stick with a solid indoor potting mix. So buy the best potting mix you can find. That'll tide you over for maybe one round of this lettuce. But if I wanted to grow something else in here, remember that the plant's using nutrients, right? So it's taking stuff from the soil. So you're going to have to add something back. And I think she was right. The blood and bone meal is a fantastic additive. Those are typically organic. You can get them organic. And it's sort of a waste product that's been repurposed into the garden. So it's a great thing to do. Standard compost is great. There's all sorts of different fertilizers you can use.
Let's say you start off with your little plant maybe right now, and then in 60 days you can transfer outside. So it goes from being safe in the home to going outside into the elements, and one of those elements is weeds. So what happens with weeds and how do you get rid of them?
So as you're bringing that seedling out, remember, let's say this was cozy in your home for a while, right? And you're going to bring it out into the garden. Yeah. There is a period in colder climates, like up in Canada, we call it the hardening off period. So what you'll do is, imagine if you were in your house and then magically you just had to live in the winter for a year. You would probably not do too well, right? The plants won't either. So what you want to do is an hour a day, bring it outside, then bring it back. The next day, do it for 2 hours. The next day, do it for 3 hours. You're sort of working its environmental adaptation
like
up a bit. You're graduating it. So I will say that, but I will answer also your question on weeds. There's sort of two schools of thought if you're not going to use a spray, which I don't use any sprays in my garden. So you can either pull them, and if you pull them, you've got to get the whole thing. And for a lot of weeds, that's actually quite difficult to do. What I prefer to do is just to smother them. Remember, weeds are still plants. If you block their access to light, they're not going to do that well. So I just use wood chips as mulch, put that in my garden, about a couple inches or so, maybe even more, and my weeds are more or less kept down.
I feel like maybe I might be anthropomorphizing plants, and I'm like, oh, it hurt you, and you'll have a setback if I'm not delicate enough. So anyway, how gentle do you have to be when you do the transfer?
That's a very, very common feeling. People will name their plants. They think that their plants feel the same way that we feel. They don't. You can be a little more rough with them. I'll show you right now. So right here I have a radish plant, right? A great easy crop to grow. What you can do is, if you were starting them, take a look. You've got some roots here, you've got the plant. Now, if I was to mangle this, then it would be in a bad spot, right? But I can be somewhat rough with it. If these roots were kind of bundled up, we call that root bound. There's too many roots. I could even clip some of those off before I transplanted it. You know, we prune our plants above the ground. We'll do some pruning above. It's not a bad idea sometimes to do it below too.
Kevin, thank you so much. You made it seem so much less intimidating than I thought, and I do have a little bit more confidence to get started. So I think I'm gonna be ordering some seeds this weekend. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We so appreciate your time.
Yeah, hey, thank you. Good luck. I will be following along. So if you need any advice, you know who to call. And thanks for having me again, guys.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.